All right.
We'll give it here about 15 seconds to get everybody inside.
Okay. I think we're ready, Alex. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, and welcome to our webinar, the ROI of Preventative Maintenance. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Zuli Maribona, Senior Vice President with KWPNC and partner. I am delighted to be here with you this afternoon and joined by my colleague, Alex Martin, with our expert panelists today's webinar. Before we dive into this session, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. The session will last approximately an hour. We will have the Q&A chat open for all of your important questions. Please, 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 no question is crazy. I think we've heard them all, and we are excited to make this session as interactive as possible. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time during the chat feature, and we will do our best to address them. It is also important to share that the information provided throughout our session today and throughout the webinar, and any recordings are intended for informational purposes only. They should not be taken, for professional, accounting, or other advice. We recommend that anything you learn today, please discuss with your association counsel or professionals hired to service your association. I'd like to turn it over to Alex, who will introduce our expert panelists this afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Alex Martin, partner over at KWPMC. Really excited about today's sessions because we have a lot of valuable information to share with you today. Our goal today is to provide you with information focused on preventive maintenance and impact on your financial well-being. And for that, today we have Sherwin Lewis from our own one and only Sherwin Lewis from KWPMC. We have Craig Miller from Integrated Cooling Solutions, and backed by popular demand, Matt Husel from Reserve Advisors. Let me start. Maybe Sherwin, let's start with you. Can you give yourself an introduction here to everyone out on the web?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Sherwin Lewis. I'm the Corporate Director of Engineering. I come with a little over 35 years of experience in facility maintenance, expertise in HVAC, and all trades, be honest.
Amazing. Yeah, and Sherwin adds
Welcome,
a lot
Sherwin.
of value building these preventive maintenance programs, and it's exciting. I've learned a lot from him, spend a lot of time with him, so I'm really excited to hear it. And next, Craig Miller from Integrated Cooling Solutions. Craig, can you give yourself introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Alex. I am with Integrated Cooling Solutions. We're a manufacturer's representative, so we're a technical sales organization around the state of Florida. We have offices in every major market. My background is I'm a graduate of UF, mechanical engineering. I started my career working for the Train company, worked there for more than 10 years, and then I had my own independent rep firm for about 15 years. And then now I am basically sales leader for the North Florida and Central Florida markets in Florida. So my background is in really technical HVAC equipment.
Amazing, Craig. I look forward to having a discussion with you today. And next is the man, Matt Husel from Reserve Advisors. Matt, can you do an intro of yourself here?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me back again, Alex. Good to see you this afternoon. I'm also an engineer. I'm a civil and environmental engineer is my background by training, but my whole professional career has really been dedicated to reserve studies. I've worked with Reserve Advisors for the last 25 years. We are a nationwide reserve study firm, and on the board of trustees of Community Associations Institute, as well as on the board of directors of my own condo association where I live. So get to looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks for having me.
Amazing.
Awesome. So let's start here with Sherwin. Sherwin, we just got past the summertime. You know, we know down in the South Florida market, humidity levels, there were points where we're hitting the high 90s, even 100 degrees at some point. What did you see here that we could have prevented or we could have done here proactively, or other buildings could have done proactively, not to have that, to avoid that downtime?
Absolutely. Well, having a good preventive maintenance plan on what most people have is RTUs, or dedicated outdoor air systems. Um, Being proactive in completing those tasks specified by the manufacturer early in the season would help reduce downtime during the season. A lot of times we're going into the seasons with situations we didn't realize, and it actualized during the middle of summer. And we need to remember today, most equipment have a lead time for repair parts, which create a longer downtime. So this, I think, a simplified way of reducing downtime.
Right. I think if I can add to that, right, it's all about it's the proactiveness behind the preventive maintenance, right? It's about efficiency. It can be the performance, right? And then it's also the costly repairs or cost savings. Alex, can we jump into a poll question first? And then we can jump back to our panelists. So I think we have Alex, I'll turn it over to you. I think you're going to kick it off with a poll question for our viewers this afternoon.
Let me pull up a poll question. So here we go. Actually, Zuli, can you take over the poll question here? My
Sure.
screen froze. Thank you.
All right. So one of the poll questions that we're going to ask is, how many of us joining us today are planning to change, and we were actually talking about that earlier today, are planning to change HVAC, your HVAC systems? So it's a simple one, yes or no? It's too bad you can't vote, Alex.
I tried.
Actually, I might have an option. Oh, no, it won't let me. Yeah. It says I can't vote. I know I am.
This is the same here.
All right, and I'll turn that over back to you, Alex, and then I'm sure we'll go over the answers soon, but.
Craig, what are you seeing out there with the systems, what people are proactive? I know we had a discussion yesterday. We had a short discussion yesterday about the new gas, the new systems that are going on, size. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can add, I think it would add something to Sherwin's original comment, which is if we're talking about a more custom type of piece of equipment, which is a dedicated outdoor air system by nature, that lead times for that specific piece of equipment are much different than what we might be accustomed to as homeowners or residents, right? Where a custom piece of equipment, it's pretty brand agnostic. In that space, is the lead time is going to be something like 20 weeks. It's not going to be an off-the-shelf product. So I think that what we see in the market right now with the refrigerant change that happened at the beginning of 2025 is that has had some impact on extended lead times. But by nature, the equipment is not a stocked product. So if it does have a catastrophic failure that can't be repaired, then it is going to be an extended lead time type product. So I think it's really important in that case to be kind of proactive in, if you're going to do a replacement, you want to do that in the cooler months. And that probably is something that would need to be planned really during the summer, at the end of summer, for the cooler months that are going to come, right?
Yeah, is that enough lead time? So if you plan this summer, do you have enough? Is that enough lead time to do it next? So the cooler summer is usually the first quarter, right, in South Florida. So
yeah, if you were to probably order a piece of equipment in the spring or late spring, you probably would get it at the end of the summer.
Okay.
So if you need to have something, let's say your equipment is maybe being maintained, but it's either near the end of its life or it's having some mechanical issues, right? And you're thinking it needs to be replaced. You probably want to look at something like that, maybe in like July or August, assuming that it's functioning now, so that you could get it in December or January.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of buildings that we managed for a while, even though the equipment had its life expired, what was estimated to be the life expired, a lot of it was still in pretty good shape, depending on the area that it was, right? Close to the ocean, by the river, inland, all that. Sherwin, can you discuss and define what preventive maintenance is on these systems, and maybe the difference between preventive and reactive maintenance?
Sure. So on a reactive maintenance is just when something is either not functioning or broken, or there seems to be a deficiency at that point. The preventive maintenance is created by the manufacturer. There are standard preventive maintenance tasks, such as filter change and things of that nature. But every manufacturer may have a small difference in requirement to ensure that that equipment is functioning according to their specification. So this is where the schedule come into play, whether it's a monthly, quarterly, most time quarterly, and there's an overhaul that I would recommend everyone to do at least once a year to ensure you go a little deeper, because at that point you may have to shut things down for a little longer period of time. So doing it in the cooler periods is the best time, but following the manufacturer specification, having the right certified individuals doing it is also a key component I think we need to keep in mind when we're having those things done. I do have a question, something to bring up, Craig just mentioned, regarding the DOS system and a standard package unit. I think everyone needs to understand those differences. So I would like Craig to expand on that a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Sherwin. We would call a dedicated outdoor air system that by name for a specific function that it performs in your building. There are code requirements for ventilation air in commercial spaces set by, ASHRAE and other Florida building codes. There are also needs in a building to make up air for exhaust that might be happening in your building. So if you have exhaust fans or kitchens or any spaces like that that are exhausting air out of the building, in general, your building needs to be under a positive pressure. So that air comes in from the outside to make that up what you're pulling out. So the function of an outdoor air unit is to cool the outdoor air that's coming in, which in the summer, obviously in Florida, is very hot and humid. Wring the moisture out of that air and then supply that air into the spaces that it serves, generally in like a neutral temperature condition. So we're making up air that we're either exhausting or that's based on ventilation loads for people. And then that air is cooled down and then typically reheated back up and supplied at a neutral dry condition. So we're basically positively pressurizing that building, or making sure that we are.
Craig, can you explain when somebody talks about positive air pressure, because a lot of people out there want to understand that better. What does that mean for a building when you have negative and positive?
So if the building has any form of exhaust in it, which almost always is the case, as that air leaves the building, it creates a negative in the building. If that is not made up by some positive air that comes in, then your building would be under negative pressure relative to the outside. And what happens in those cases is the air is going to be pulled in from somewhere through doors, cracks, loose building envelope places, right? So it's going to come into the building. And if it doesn't come and it's directed through an outside air piece of equipment, it's going to come in an unconditioned state. So it's going to be wet and hot. And that creates, potential for a damp building, essentially, which, can lead to other things like building degradation, mold, those kind of situations.
Yeah, I learned that recently. Sherwin and I, we took over a building not too long ago, transitioned a building into KW, and a lot of people were having smells coming in from other units, cooking smells, bathroom smells. And Sherwin, we went up, we looked at it. Well, Sherwin and his team went up there and realized that that building has so much negative pressure because the art, Sherwin, correct me if I'm wrong, the RT unit, fresh air units were not working at full capacity, doing what they had to do with the static pressure sensors or something. Am I right?
That's correct.
I'm not an engineer, but I want to, I love all this stuff.
That is
And
correct.
once those
Absolutely.
RPMs are sped up and we were able to cool the system down, we were able to get that positive air pressure. And immediately it was unbelievable how the air in the building smelled clean.
Yeah.
No more smells from cooking going in from one unit to another, getting sucked in from
That's
another
terrible.
unit from right. So it's it's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
So can I jump over to Matt? I want to actually go back a little bit and talk a little bit further about the importance and differences between the preventive maintenance and reactive maintenance and big picture, right? Because whether you're a condo, high rise, low rise, or you're a large HOA, most associations have a reserve component of some sort and a requirement of maintaining those assets, right? So the impact on the reserves can be exponential. And so, Matt, if you want to or can just elaborate on what that looks like and what you're seeing on your end and the potential impact, right, on the reserves side of
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely, yeah, because you're talking about obviously air conditioning is very discomforting when we don't have it in South Florida, but there is a huge financial impact to preventative maintenance overall. There's a report published by a large real estate firm that said preventative maintenance for them, they felt achieved about a 545% ROI on every preventative maintenance done. Now that's all types of maintenance, from air conditioning to cleaning and maybe structural items as well. But without the maintenance, so each reserve study is kind of simple at a high level. It's going to have useful lives, remaining useful lives, and costs. And if we're not conducting our typical preventative maintenance, which is like we've talked about, scheduled maintenance ahead of time, we may not achieve that remaining useful life. So now all of a sudden a project component item needs to be replaced sooner and can cost a much higher amount than you had reserved for, assuming that a normal useful life. And on the other hand, sometimes aggressive maintenance can actually extend the life of a component. So with the last few years, when we've had all these reserve requirements for folks, people keep coming to us and saying, what can we do to reduce these reserve requirements? They're very expensive. We want to do that. And kind of one of the first things we look at is, well, where could we insert maybe a little more preventative maintenance to extend some of those remaining useful lives and keep things lasting a little bit longer.
Right, absolutely. It is so important, right? Many times I know Alex mentioned a recent community that we brought on, and many times that's very common for us to find that there isn't a well-documented preventive maintenance plan or the existence of a plan that we can see. And obviously, Sherwin, you can speak to that much better than Alex and I, right? But those are one of the things that we typically assess and how important it is, right? Because the community does show that. So Alex, back to you.
Yeah, Matt and gentlemen, the cost predictability and budgeting is so important. So it's so important to know your systems and when you're going to do this. Can you talk a little bit about this? What's the process? What best practices to use to really be proactive in this in doing this?
Sure. Yeah, I can start, and I'm sure others will have comments on this as well. But we're from a reserve standpoint, we do include actually maintenance items. In fact, that's one of the definitions of condominium reserves in Florida is what they call deferred maintenance, which isn't necessarily deferred. It might just be something that's a repair. They define it as just a repair of an item. And so if it's a substantial repair that happens less frequently than annually, our recommendation would be to put that into the reserve schedule. There's a threshold that just adjusted this year that says anything $25,000 or more has to be a reserve item if it's happening less frequently than annually. But a lot of the communities that we work with, smaller communities, will include a lower threshold. So maybe a $10,000 repair or a $5,000 repair if it's not happening annually or quarterly from the reserves. And so that's how we look at maybe the bigger, less frequent components. And I'll let maybe Sherwin and Craig talk about the more seasonal and ongoing components of maintenance that would be funded through the operating budget.
Go ahead, Sherwin.
We lose Sherwin?
I'm sorry. No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Yes, there are some of the components could include whether you need gas because of leakage or sensors. One of the big components, especially for dedicated outside air systems, are the sensors. So this is something Craig and I spoke of yesterday, where those sensors are a key component. If they fail or at least become inefficient, it will cause the system to not function properly. But there's many different aspects of repairs, whether it's gas, other components that fail over time that need to be added to it. But I have a question for Matt on a simple, or not a simple, on a dedicated outdoor air system. What's the life expectancy that you're seeing out?
A good question. A lot of it depends on its exposure and maintenance, right? That goes on there. But if we're going to assume that that you're following the manufacturer's recommendation, and you're talking about like a package type unit, probably 15 years.
That would be a good lifespan. Yeah. I mean, typically they, for unitary or DX type equipment or OA units, you would target 15 years. If it was on the coast, that might be different for corrosion and things like that don't have anything to do with the components. It has more to do with the environment around it. We see units that when they're properly maintained, that last 17, 18 years. That would be an excellent result, that a unit would last that long. One of the issues with, I would say, this type of system is that it runs typically very hard a lot of the time. So the compressors, the condenser fans, all of those mechanical components run pretty much in Florida just about any time it's hot, which is even at night in Florida, it is humid, right? It might cool off a little bit, but it's still very humid. So typically from a life cycle standpoint, they're going to last less than a traditional piece of equipment that has some periods of off time. It's going to run pretty much during the summer, maybe from May to October, September. It's going to run pretty much 24/7 all the time at a fairly high load. So it does have a little bit of impact on its longevity.
Oh,
Absolutely. Go ahead, Alex. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sherwin.
No, I was going to add, in terms of replacement, when we're replacing those units, there are some items I think we need to check off the list to ensure that we're doing it correctly. Craig and I discussed ensuring that the load or the size of the unit is adequate to the current state of the building. So this is something I think we need to look at. So I'm not sure if you want to expand on that a little bit, Craig.
Yeah, I think it's important whenever you're replacing something like this that has a pressurization component of your building to maybe have, it might be appropriate to have what's called a test and balance done on your building to make sure that it is in a positive pressure state, that we talked about how important that is. If some part of your building has been repurposed, or you've added exhaust, or you've added changed some functionality of some common space, that would be the first thing that I would try to do, is make sure that we are operating under a current positive state, and then also to make sure that it's sized appropriately for the current conditions. Fortunately, if it's 15 years old, it's probably not running at 100% like when it started. So there's a good chance if you replace it with even something very similar in size, it's probably going to perform a lot better. So you're probably going to see an immediate improvement when you do that.
Absolutely. Now, I do have one other question regarding, to follow question to this. So what is a normal set point for the building interior, temperature and humidity?
So typically in Florida, or really in most commercial spaces, our target would be 74, 75 degrees that you would see on your thermostat on the wall, and then something like 50 to 60% relative humidity in the building. So that is a comfort range for people. In general, outside air equipment is typically not intended to be run colder than that. We want to pressurize the space. It's sometimes intended to maybe provide some cooling to corridors and common spaces, but typically most of your actual comfort cooling is taken place by some other equipment. So we would see this type of equipment supplying dry, kind of neutral temperature air.
Thank you.
Sure. When one of our board president just sent me a text of a building that we took over back in early summer. He says, explain previously for a couple of years, they didn't have a reheat on a fresh air unit. And they were complaining about condensation because whoever was managing it previously just turned it off because they couldn't cool the building. And now he says that after we went through that process, explained about the reheat, how important it is, and not to turn it off and just try to cool the water, but you're still bringing in humidity with cool air and how it affects the inside of the building, right? He said,
Absolutely.
you need to explain that, Alex, because he didn't know this and he learned this from us. And now that we did the change, they're actually saving money. Let me just read his text. They're saving money and they no longer have the humidity issues in the building of wallpaper and all this other stuff that was happening.
That's correct. There's difference between just cooling where you're reducing temperature. So you could have a building that's the actual temperature could be 60 degrees, but humidity is very high. So you're not removing the moisture or the water from the air itself. The reheat creates kind of a dehumidification before the air enters the building. And that is where the hot gas bypass came into play. In the past, as mentioned earlier, having someone certified that understand how those systems are designed or should function is key. If you don't, then you may believe a simple cooling of temperature, you have achieved your goal, which is a way, not the best way to go about it. I think Craig and I spoke about this in terms of a package unit. This is not a package unit. This is not a straight air conditioner. This is really a dehumidification of air and conditioning of air before it enters the building.
Yeah, there are some components of it that are primarily unique to this application. Reheat is one of those components, and if that is not functioning and you're supplying very cold air into a space that's not being reheated into a neutral state, you're going to create a very cool, damp space, basically. That's going to be the result of doing that. So it's important. One of the things that Sherman and I talked about yesterday was he's very familiar with this. If you were to open up the casing of a unit like this, you're going to see what looks like something that might fly the space shuttle. There's going to be controls in that unit that are much different than a standard light commercial or residential product. It's going to have a very sophisticated control system in it. So it needs to have someone who has a higher level of aptitude in the HVAC world to really work on that. And that there are many mechanical contractors that are very capable in every market. It's not that it's completely unique, but it needs to be someone who has a higher technician capability, essentially.
I have and thank you, Craig. I have a question. We're actually getting great questions online, so thank you everyone that's participating. One of the questions is, I guess, explaining the benefits of a BMS system. So I know that we're always big proponents of having that. So can we just take a few minutes to explain the whys behind? It's always typically a yes, and we should have that.
Yeah, David online here has a great question. Like, what software is available for managing PM systems, BMS systems? All.
I can start off with this. Well, for me,
Both. Those would be two different questions, right? So
Yeah.
yes, go ahead, Sherwin.
well, sensible. I work with almost all the systems out there. The one that I actually recommend the most now is been the Siemens system, but there are other ones out there. Now, a BMS system does help you understand trends of the building. It give you early warning. Currently, if you have your system running without a BMS, you are reacting to a failure. You're reacting to changes. You don't know what happened overnight in terms of trends, which compressor, which fan, and the movement of the building. It's all unknown to you. A BMS system allows you to track the building, understand the nuances, occupancy compared to the time of day, compared to which load you need to change to, to achieve the goal that we all want. So I would highly recommend it. The other item is when there's a failure, instead of waiting for the owners or the occupants to complain, the BMS system could help you with those early warning. There's just a few items, but it does have an ROI to it, which will help you save money. So you do have a component of ROI in it.
And for those of us that may not know what BMS means,
Oh, yes.
just correct me if I'm wrong, Sherwin, we're talking about building management system, correct?
That is correct. It's an electronic building management system that look at all the components, and the more components you add to it, the higher the ROI will be.
Matt, can you explain ROI when you put in these new systems and how they pay off? I've really learned this by seeing the utility usage in a lot of these buildings. I mean, Sherwin, that one building that we took over, how we within 6 months, the saving was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how much money we saved by implementing these systems.
Yeah.
Matt, are you able to calculate the return on investment on these new systems?
Um, no, not typically. I mean, I
Okay.
think they can. We don't do that, but I know they
Okay.
can. That can be done. Because you're absolutely right. Not only you know, the ability to sense and predict, like Sharon was talking about, but also just the energy usage and the ability to balance where you're using your electricity and energy going into the building. That so the utility costs right there are a big piece of
Yeah.
those systems. Um, you know, there are some energy audits and things like that that can calculate. You can get that done. I personally don't do those, but
Okay.
our team does, and so yeah, there's a way to do that, and really they are a huge advantage. And one of the areas, you know, with technology everywhere in our lives, this is one of the areas that technology's come into our buildings and really helped us, you know, predict maintenance, save money, eliminate downtime. And even they can do what we call now prescriptive maintenance, which is like the machine can learn and tell you, okay, something's going to probably go wrong here because of this, and really get out in front of projects. It's just kind of amazing. I think someone said it's like flying a spaceship now. It's just the technology is so advanced with those building management systems that any a building of any size would benefit from them.
Yeah, it really is amazing because you could really do things more on a proactive and a reactive basis,
Mm-hmm.
and you reduce that downtime. That doesn't affect the quality of life of the resident. Sherwin, can you talk about that savings in that one building? I'm not going to mention a name, but
Absolutely.
I think you
Well,
know what you're talking about. I want to see what, you know, what was it that was done there when we took over that building that had that major savings.
well, most systems, when the engineer designed the system, is really those individuals take time to understand how the building should function, and all the items they install is set in an automatic way. They understand the different loads and demand and set those items accordingly. Over time, whether the maintenance individuals may not understand those nuances and change things to make it work. So you know, adjusting things to manual override, it worked, but it's not functioning according to design. And this is where the overspending of consumption, electrical, water, all of those things cause the inefficiency. By switching them back to automatic, really had a cost savings. The cost savings on, I think, was over 300 to 600,000 at that
Yes.
point. But what we did is also install a full BMS system on that building, which over the course of the next 3 years, they will have well over $3 million of savings when it's all said and done.
That's unbelievable. I mean, the investment is worth it now. So if you're running some of these old systems, just save money. I think the ROI, sometimes you could do that cost analysis. The ROI is there. It's so worth doing it now.
Yes, it is.
Because you're
Yes,
going
it
to
is.
save anyways. You're going to save that money anyways in the future. So, and the return on investment is there pretty quick. Craig, talk about talk about the technology. Like, has the technology really changed in the last 10, 15 years? Because a lot of these systems we're seeing in these older buildings, they haven't changed them. And I know they're just pulling, I'm not an electrician, all this amperage and wattage, and they're just running hard, full speed ahead, and just using this. What have you seen in changes in technology over the last 10, 15 years? I see it just in cars alone every 3, 4, 5 years. When you change a car, the technology is totally different. So I can imagine in the HVAC world.
Yeah, I think the biggest change that we've seen in the past probably 10 years is the introduction of variable capacity type controls within a piece of equipment, to where we're able to operate the units to exactly match the load that exists. So as the temperatures and the ambient conditions change, the old style would have been to basically run the unit wide open, because the only type of components that were available were on-off type components. So you run them on because they need to be on, because
well, just for when Craig, for everybody out there, when he says wide open, that's like putting your car pedal to the metal and hoping you don't blow anything, right?
So basically, the way an old style dedicated outdoor air unit would operate would be, we would have, to use an analogy that you started, which is we would control the speed of our car by putting the accelerator full on and control the speed with the brake.
Yeah.
So it's basically how you would control capacity in the old days, right? So there was basically full on, and we're braking the system that's full on, right? So the new technologies allow us to exactly press the accelerator to the degree that we need to go 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, whatever that is, right? So we're only putting in the energy that we need to accomplish the task that we see. In the same, there are various parts of the equipment, and the introduction of variable speed technology is applied throughout the without getting too much into the technical weeds of the equipment. It's applied throughout the equipment with fan speeds, compressor technology, all of that is very, and those components now are much cheaper than they used to be. They're less expensive. So, and they've been proven, they've been operating for 10 years, like you said. There's variable speed technology, there's all kinds of things, but it is proven. It is not something that's a year or two old. It's 10 years old.
Yeah.
So I have a question, Matt, for you on more of the financial planning piece. And as we know, associations, there's been just a lot of changes, right, on our statutes over the last few years. And it's trying to make sure that we get away from the shorter term budgeting and planning, right? And so how would you explain, and I'm sort of trying to find a way to explain my own question and my thought process, but how do you help explain the real value, I suppose, of one, preventive maintenance, and two, the financial planning behind the reserve component to a client, right? So how do we explain the real value of preventative maintenance in financial terms?
Sure.
Especially to those that have been focused on that shorter term budgeting.
Yeah. Well, again, it does, it's proven to have an ROI. Obviously, the examples that were given today of the building management system being able to save money and use energy more efficiently, absolutely. But the shift, it is a mind shift, it's a paradigm shift of boards to stop thinking about the short term and start thinking a little bit longer term. And I do think with the reserves requirements now and the reserve mandates, essentially, that we have to look out longer on some of these components that forces a board to say, okay, over the long term, what are our costs going to be? And if we do the preventative maintenance or maybe more aggressive maintenance, can we reduce our long-term costs? I remind people all the time, a roof, an air conditioner doesn't care how long you want it to last, or how much money you have in the bank, or what the lawmakers say you have to save for or not. When it's time to do some replacing of it, you have to do it. And a board has that F word that I always talk about in these sessions, not a bad word, a fiduciary, which is the responsibility.
It sounds like a bad word to many, right?
To some. It's a very difficult mindset, again, to have, that you're not, when you're a board member in a community association, you're not to be concerned about immediately what's here and now. You're running a very large business, and you're not concerned about your own personal interests. You have to put the interest of the business first, and what's going to be best for the business over time. And so I would assume, Craig, you probably see better adoption in commercial spaces where you have very sophisticated owners of these systems. I mean, that's my experience, and that boards, tend to think more short term. But when you start to think sophisticated, listen to your team around you and your engineers and your management, to show like there is a long-term savings and a long-term benefit to make for financial savings, but also a more harmonious, more valuable building to live in, because you don't have the smells. You have consistent HVAC. You have quiet running systems. You have
Sure.
modern looking
Less shutdowns.
equipment,
Right.
less shutdowns. And I mean, and maintenance, of course, goes to every portion of the building. That's very visible, and can absolutely do a return on investment, in that each owner is going to have more value in their condominium if they're taking care of these maintenance items.
Yeah,
I think one of the things that we see commonly, because being in the business that we are, we have service technicians,
Mhm.
we have parts that we sell, and we have new equipment. And what we often see at the end of a unit's life is a lot of money being put into a unit that's 13, 14 years old because it is failing in the summer, and there is no way to replace it.
Mm.
So it has to be repaired, which costs a lot of, that's a lot of money, but it's near the end of its life. So we're sinking money. I see people all the time having to sink money into pieces of equipment that maybe if they would have had a little bit more proactive plan to replace, they might have replaced it at this moment in time when it's actually, but because it doesn't matter how much money you put into it. If it's 14, 15 years old, it's still going to need to be replaced in a couple of years. So,
Right.
It's a great.
Or it could have been proactively scheduled, right? So
and now you've spent double the
Right.
money on the
Right.
equipment.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a great point. I want to just touch on something we call all the time. It's the total cost of ownership. So if you've got that piece of equipment, and say it's $150,000 equipment, and it lasts 15 years, well, that's $10,000 a year is the cost of that equipment. And if the maintenance that you're putting into it is not going to extend it above that, or cost more than that, it's absolutely reaching that tipping point of time to replace and time to stop throwing good money after bad, as some people say.
Right.
it
Yeah,
becomes a money
sure.
pit, becomes a total money pit. I mean, you're just losing your money. Yeah, I think there's only one time we recommended, right, Sherwin, we took about 3-4 years ago. This one building had a unit that was like 20 years old, was falling apart, and we just had to get through the hot month, because it
Yeah.
wasn't the time to change it. So we just said, let's make this the smallest repair we need just to keep the unit running to get for the next couple months till we get to winter time to replace the whole unit. 'Cause you
Hold
don't
it together.
Yeah, just hold it together for those couple
We did.
months, because you can't have a building go without AC, during the hottest months of the year. So, but I totally agree with you. It just becomes a money pit. People don't realize how much money they spend on these older units, fixing them, keeping them up. Yeah, the ROI is there. Do an ROI analysis, and you'll see it's there.
Sherwin, I'm coming for you now.
Go for it.
I have two final questions. I'm sorry, guys. I keep jumping in, but two hot ones for you. So, first one is, what is the biggest misconception, right, that our boards at times, or even some of our own colleagues, managers, may have about preventive maintenance? That's the first one. And the second one is, let's say you're an association that, for one reason or another, you just don't know where to begin. You don't have a good plan in place. It's never been done or documented. And you really want to invest the time and the resources where to start. So those two.
Okay, so first misconception is you have a new building or a new equipment, and you believe the type of maintenance that should be conducted on those units is different from the one that you had. It's not. The same task number is for the old is same for the new. It didn't change. The manufacturers still require you doing these 20 steps.
Great point.
So you skip steps, whether you skip steps with your the company you hired to conduct those preventive maintenance. Not to say they will change the same amount of parts, but they still need to check those 20 or 30, whatever number, it did not change. So if you conduct the same approach as you did the old equipment, the new equipment will last much longer. I see this all the time. They say, well, I didn't think I need to spend the money. I can save the money that I spent on preventive maintenance. And I can tell you, please do not do that. Keep the momentum going forward. And your second question, if you can repeat the second one.
It's and just to elaborate a little bit on that, it's new equipment and new buildings, new communities as well, right?
Same thing. Same thing.
That don't see the importance behind the preventive maintenance. Your community won't be new forever. And
that is correct.
It's prolonging the beauty and the effectiveness of your community is the preventive maintenance. The second question was, if you've never had a plan in place and you're
Where do you start?
overwhelmed, where to start?
There, we have a basics preventive maintenance plan. This one is a boilerplate, simple start, regardless of the equipment you have. Every building have a standard which starts out with life safety. 2, you look at anything that's operational, movement, motors, pumps, fans. You start, that's another item component of it. And then you move on to other areas that are fixed. But if anything that moves, anything that consumes, whether water or power, you could start there. There is a plan for it, whether you know it or not. I have all the basic templates. If your pump does not have a nameplate, there is a basic, what you call default. I'm sorry, there's a default plan that can assist with this. I want to add one other item to the first answer. The less you conduct preventive maintenance, even on new equipment, the consumption on those items incrementally rises month over month, year over year. So you may not see it in downtime, but it's affecting your pocket and consumption, even though you're not seeing it in repair costs. So you're paying one way or the other. Just keep that in mind.
It's true. And the technology.
And well, that's yes.
As we evolve as humans and right?
Yes.
And systems and stuff like that. So yeah, changes a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, we have a question, good question here from Monique. She's asking, are doors that push in from the inside in a building hard to open also a sign of negative pressure? And does excess positive pressure do the opposite to push doors out and keep them open?
It depends on what direction she's going in, but that sounds like excessive amount.
If it's hard to open the door from the outside, the building is probably negative. The door is being pulled inward. Right.
Yes.
If the door is hard to close, then the building might be slightly overpressurized. Yes, that is where you would typically see that. The most readily visible, or since our senses would pick it up, is their exterior doors to the building.
That's a good point. Yeah. So if I'm walking into a building, all of a sudden I just feel a bunch of cold air coming out as I'm walking in, that's most likely some positive pressure there, right?
That's positive, right. Which
yeah.
is okay relative to what you want it to be. You don't want it to be overpressurized. I think many of us would recognize this when you walk up to maybe a restaurant that has a kitchen operating in it, and you pull that door, and maybe that door feels like air is going into the building, or that door is a little hard to open. Mm-hmm. That's an example of a building that is probably running negative.
Got it. Okay, great. Matt, what are you seeing in costs of equipment in the future? Are you seeing any trends and Craig too? I mean, are we seeing a rise in costs? Are we seeing it plateau? What's happening? What do you see here in the near future? And
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everything's going up. I mean, the
is it?
materials are harder to get. The more technology we have in it, the more expensive it is. And we just talked about how much technology is in these. So, yeah, seeing a rise in costs for sure, and labor too. Labor is becoming more and more scarce for a lot of reasons. But qualified technicians are have to live too, and the cost of that impacts the maintenance costs and replacement costs the same. So, so those are two things to consider, and to continue again to put your fiduciary hat on. And it's never fun to tell your neighbors that costs are going up, but that is the reality of the world around us, and so we just have to be transparent with that information to our membership. You guys seen anything different?
No, I think that we saw some very unique circumstances with COVID and things like that. And, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, where costs went up fairly drastically over a 2.5 year period of time. They have stabilized to some degree in terms of they're not going up at that level that they were, but they are still going up, Matt, and they're not going to come down.
Right.
You're not going to buy equipment at some point in the future that is less than what it is now, unfortunately.
I wonder if utility costs are outpacing it though. I mean, those costs are in some markets are extraordinarily increasing faster than maybe the equipment costs. So that break even on again, that ROI.
Yeah, that's an efficiency conversation and how you can improve, the building there could be some, like you guys talked about, ROI on that for sure.
Yeah.
That's actually a good point.
Questions, Alex, online one's for
Oh,
Matt.
yeah. Matt, question for Matt. What do you think of all the associations that transferred all of their non-CERS to their initial CERS, stripping the non-CERS of reserves for expensive HVAC and elevator modernization projects?
So yeah, so the question here is because obviously now buildings 3 or more
Yeah.
habitable stories have to have structural integrity reserves. Some buildings said, okay, well, since we have to mandate those, we're going to take all of our reserves and put them into structural reserves and not leave anything over for non-structural items. So Barry, those communities are going to be faced again. The AC equipment, the elevators don't care. They're going to need to be replaced. They need to function in the building, and so those communities unfortunately are going to be faced with special assessments. Perhaps financing is something that seems to be becoming more and more attractive for communities that need this situation. And look, that may make perfect sense. Again, just some of that ROI that we talk about, it may make sense to finance one of these replacements to get it done, schedule it, get it done at a time that's convenient for folks to avoid downtime, and then also take advantage of some of that utility savings if possible.
Agree. That's a good question, Barry. Jason has a question here. As a board, we need to make sure we're compliant with needs of the town. How would you recommend working with the town and their inspectors? That's a good question for you, Sherwin.
Oh, that's it. Well, first off, every township municipality have a list, if you contact their building department, of compliance items that they see that they're constantly seeing within that area. I would start there. Even where I live, I go down the list to make sure I'm in compliance and look at any new changes of rules or codes that they would like us to follow. So the same thing goes for your condo.
That's great. So we're down to the 5-minute mark here. And I think it's time to get around the room here. I want you all to share your best practices here. What are you seeing out there? What's a best practice? What is something you would recommend to a board member to do today? Let's start with Senor Matt.
Thanks. I'm going to build on something I think Sherwin said is come up with a plan. It can be very simple, but start somewhere with some sort of record, because as your board changes and things happen in the buildings, you want to have some records. So Start with some sort of plan. I'm going to put in the link to the chat, a group that I'm a part of. I mentioned earlier, Community Associations Institute actually has a best practice manual. So it's not my best practices. It's the organization has a huge best practice manual full of checklists and things that you could use to get ideas. But I'll also encourage you to work with your manager company to get something in place. It doesn't have to be overly complex to start. Just get something in place that you're taking care of things that should be taken care of for your building.
Thank you,
Great.
Matt.
Craig?
I would kind of step off of what Matt suggested and Sherwin in terms of a plan. And I would, even if you're not having an issue, I would seek out the services of some local contractors when things are okay, as opposed to when you're in a situation when you're in a desperate situation when the building's hot, right? Try to have local contacts in your community with 2, 3, 4 good HVAC contractors. They're going to be the ones who are going to be able to come in and maybe even perform like an analysis or an assessment on your equipment. But to do that ahead of time and proactively is better than to have to do it, when something is broken, basically.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Love it, Craig. Thank you. Sherwin?
Absolutely. Well, for me, an advice for everyone: think of your building as your car. Think of how you maintain your car. Most of us may have our own private or mechanic that we like, but over time there are situations that are outside that person's comprehension. Where do you go? You go back to the manufacturer. So if you're in a building that's having issues that seems to be continuous, whether month over month or year over year, try to think of putting things back to the original manufacturer specification, and there's a reason for it. The engineer that designed or spec that particular equipment did it for a reason. And a lot of times, whether you may have hired someone who did not understand those things, may put things in a way that does not function in conjunction with your building. So putting things back to specification, I think, is the best advice I could give anyone.
I agree. I even personally, like I was asking you guys earlier today about air conditioners for homes, right? I did a cost analysis of installing a new air conditioner in my home. We do this all the time in buildings and HOAs and condos. And when I did the cost analysis of energy, utilities rising, the cost of the product rising for the next 2-3 years. My AC unit, it's 10 years old. It still has another maybe 3 to 5 years left, right? I said, I'm going to pull the trigger now for this for the first quarter of next year when it's cold. I'm going to do it in my personal home because between the utilities rising, the efficiency that I'm going to save, right, in the future, and utilities and saving utilities and rising utilities, my ROI is going to be almost like 28 months when I did the numbers. So if I would have waited another 2, 3, 4 years, I'd be paying another 30-40% for this AC unit. I'd be paying more utility. Plus, it affects my quality of life. So it's a no-brainer. If you're proactive and you're looking at this, do that cost analysis, do that ROI. I'm telling you, you're going to save money. Technology is moving so fast nowadays. Pull the trigger, get it done. It's your quality of life, it's consumption, it's everything. It's a no-brainer. Sometimes we can't get stuck. Paralysis by overanalysis. We can't get stuck. Get the best price out there. Negotiate. Do your things that you got to do. Do it the right way.
Diligence, right.
Yeah, but do your due diligence, right? But do it. Do it. Don't
take action. It's
pull
going
the
to lead
trigger.
to, as Alex mentioned, it's going to lead to return in efficiency and performance and ultimately cost savings. It really is.
The cost savings is there, especially with all the new technology. Okay. All right, everyone. It was truly a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you for being on our webinar, and everyone out there, be on the lookout for our one that's coming out in November. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice day.
As always, thank you for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a good